2. Concentration of production and the development of monopolies are the basis for the development of state monopoly capitalism. Development of state monopoly capitalism. State-owned capital evolves with the development of imperialism, reaching its peak during the general crisis of capitalism. The concentration of production and capital leads to monopolies, merging banking and industrial capital. Financial oligarchy. The merger of banking and industrial capital forms a financial oligarchy, which dominates both the economy and politics. This oligarchy is characterized by a small group controlling the state apparatus and monopolies. Crisis intensification. During the general crisis of capitalism, production concentration and monopoly development reach unprecedented levels. A few large monopolies dominate their industries, with only a handful of banks controlling the financial sector. Example of Germany. In 1907, large enterprises in Germany, although only 0.9% of the total, employed 39.4% of workers and controlled 75.3% of steam power and 77.2% of electric power. In 1905, there were 385 cartels with 12,000 enterprises. By 1911, this increased to 550 to 600 cartels. The Rhine-Westphalian Coal Syndicate controlled 95.4% of coal production in its region and 55.4% nationally in 1910. The Krupp firm dominated the war industry, while AEG and Siemens-Schuckert led the electrical industry. 9 major banks in Berlin held 49% of all deposits in 1912-13. The country's economy and state affairs were controlled by a small group of about 300 capital magnates, as noted by Lenin. State monopoly capitalism in Germany. Germany led other imperialist states in state monopoly capitalism during World War I, with advanced financial capitalism organization compared to the USA. Impact of World War I on monopolies. The war accelerated monopoly development, particularly in Germany, leading to a surge in production concentration and capital centralization during the post-war inflation and the 1929-1933 economic crisis. Concentration of manufacturing and banking. By 1925, enterprises with 50 or more workers constituted 1.2% of establishments but employed 47.6% of workers. In 1929, 9 Berlin banks held 67.5% of all deposits, up from 49% in 1912-13. Growth of cartels and trusts. The number of cartels in Germany increased from 1,000 in 1922 to approximately 2,500 in 1932. Trusts like IG Farbenindustrie and Vereinigt Stahlwerk emerged as powerful monopolistic associations. Monopoly dominance in industries. By the early 1930s, significant monopolies dominated key industries. In ferrous metallurgy, 5 monopolistic associations held 86% of iron smelting, while 4 monopolies in the automotive industry held 71% of production. Impact of Nazi regime. The Nazi rise to power further intensified the concentration of production and monopolies, benefiting from military contracts and the collapse of small and medium enterprises. Joint stock companies. Between 1927 and 1932, the number of joint stock companies declined by 19.5%, but share capital increased by 3.3%. By 1943, fewer but larger companies dominated the market, with significant increases in average capital per enterprise. Concentration of economic power. By 1935, major concerns controlled significant shares of various industries, including 82.4% in coal and 85.2% in electricity production. 13 major industrial concerns dominated the industrial landscape, holding significant capital and influence. Financial oligarchy in Germany. The heads of major concerns and banks constituted Germany's financial oligarchy. They were instrumental in the rise of fascism, representing reactionary and imperialist capitalism. State monopoly capitalism. Germany led in the development of state monopoly capitalism between the 2 world wars. Other countries, particularly England and the USA, made significant advancements in this period. Concentration of production and capital in the USA. The USA saw a rapid concentration of production and capital, especially during capitalism's general crisis. Data from 1904 and 1909 showed large enterprises increased their share of workers and production. By 1909, A small number of enterprises, 1%, employed 30.5% of workers and produced 43.8% of products. Rise of monopolies. Major monopolies like the Oil Trust and Steel Trust emerged in the USA. In 1909, industrial corporations accounted for 25.9% of all enterprises but employed 75.6% of workers. Banking concentration. The USA saw a concentration of banking power, with Rockefeller and Morgan dominating significant capital. Continued growth during crises. The concentration of production accelerated during the general crisis of capitalism. By 1939, large enterprises accounted for 5.2% of all enterprises, employing 55% of workers and producing 67.4% of products. Impact of world wars. World wars accelerated production concentration. By 1947, enterprises with more than 500 workers employed 45.9% of all workers. Enterprises with over 1,000 workers saw significant growth in numbers and employment share. Capital concentration. The number of American corporations grew significantly from 1929 to 1947, reflecting increased capital concentration. Manufacturing industry corporations held a more significant position than in earlier years. Industry dominance. Corporations dominated electricity, communications, and nearly monopolized mining, manufacturing, transport, finance, trade, construction, and services. The 200 largest non-financial corporations owned 48% of all non-financial corporate assets in 1929 and 55% by the early 1930s. Monopolization trends. The monopolization process involved an increase in monopolistic associations and a concentration of dominant monopolies in each industry. Before World War II, a few monopolies controlled over 50% of the output in various industries in the U.S. industry examples. In the metal container industry, 1939, American Kinco produced 55.4% of all tin products, with Continental Kinco at 28.3%. The copper industry, 1937, was dominated by Kennecott, 35.9%, Anaconda, 22.9%, and Phelps Dodge, 18.8%. In 1937, the four largest companies in many industries provided significant portions of output, indicating high levels of monopolization. Economic control. By 1935, the 200 largest non-financial and 50 financial corporations controlled 46.5% of all U.S. corporate assets. The National Resources Commission identified close ties among 250 major corporations, with significant overlap in directorships. Financial influence. 8 financial groups, e.g., Morgan, Rockefeller, dominated the U.S. economy, controlling major corporations with vast assets. The Morgan Group alone controlled assets worth $30.2 billion in 1935, spanning various industries. Impact of World War II. The war accelerated production concentration and capital centralization, benefiting large firms over small ones. By 1944, firms with 1,000 plus employees increased their workforce share from 39% to 52.8%. Post-war monopolization. The 250 largest corporations' assets grew to $192.8 billion in 1948. Monopolization intensified, with the largest firms controlling significant industry shares. By 1947, 113 corporations with assets over $100 million each controlled 40.1% of all manufacturing assets. Financial oligarchy. By 1948, major financial groups controlled 120 of the 250 large corporations, with total assets doubling to over $120 billion since 1935. United States. The war accelerated the development of financial capital and oligarchies. A handful of capital magnates dominated the economy. Largest monopolies began subjugating the bourgeois state apparatus. England. Slower production concentration before World War I. Later cartelization compared to Germany and the U.S. Despite free trade, production concentration led to monopolies, as noted by Lenin. Post-World War I, monopolies developed rapidly with an increase in trade associations from 500 in 1919 to 2,500 in 1944. Formation of large trusts like Imperial Chemical Industries and Unilever, which dominated various industries. Vickers, a military metallurgical concern, expanded significantly, forming several large steel and metallurgical monopolies. Banking concentration developed with major banks like Midland, Lloyds, Westminster, Barclays, and National Provincial dominating the sector. World War II further increased production and banking concentration, entrenching financial oligarchs in government. Japan, industrial development began later than in other countries but rapidly accelerated post-World War I. Increase in large commercial and industrial companies with significant capital growth. Monopolies emerged in main industries with large trusts and concerns gaining dominance. Banking concentration paralleled industrial monopolies, leading to powerful concerns like Mitsui, Mitsubishi, Yasuda, and Sumitomo. Merging of banks with industry was common, creating comprehensive control over the economy. Comparative insights. Differences in protectionism and free trade between countries resulted in minor variations in monopoly formation. Concentration of production and the rise of monopolies are considered general laws of capitalism's modern development stage. The concentration of production and development of monopolies continued to grow significantly before and after World War II in England and Japan. Role of banks in concerns. Banks are crucial in the economic concerns they belong to, with significant interconnections with other concern parts through systems of participation and personal union. Parent companies like Mitsui, Sumitomo, Mitsubishi, and Yasuda hold substantial shares in their corresponding banks, ensuring control over the concern. Zaibatsu system. The Zaibatsu, or financial cliques, embody financial capital and oligarchy in Japan, wielding influence over the economy and state affairs. Notable Zaibatsu include Mitsui, Mitsubishi, Sumitomo, and Yasuda, which dominated Japan's economic landscape. World War II impact on Japanese monopolies. World War II brought profits to Japanese monopolists through military orders and expansion, increasing production concentration and monopoly power. The number of commercial banks decreased, while their deposits grew significantly. The largest banks like Mitsui, Mitsubishi, Sumitomo, Yasuda, and Sanwa held significant market shares. Capital growth of Japanese concerns. From 1937 to 1945, the capital of the Big Four concerns grew dramatically, with Mitsui and Mitsubishi increasing 2.5 times and Sumitomo and Yasuda by 7 to 8 times. State monopoly capitalism in Russia. Pre-revolutionary Russia, although agrarian, saw rapid industrial capitalism growth, with production concentration leading to monopolies. Russian syndicates monopolized significant industry sectors, and the banking system grew in tandem, closely merging with industrial capital. Banking and industry union in Russia. Banks and industrial capital merged through personal unions and connections with foreign banks, forming a financial oligarchy closely tied to the state. Tsarist Russia's government supported monopolies with profits, military orders, loans, and subsidies. Lenin's observations. Lenin highlighted the merger of banking and industrial capital and the presence of state monopoly capitalism in Russia. Syndicates like Protogol and Protomet exemplified monopolistic practices, supported by state involvement.